Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Today we have a gel printing video. It's a long one, so you need to grab a coffee. Also, please do me a favor. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button, click on the bell, and select the option to be notified of upcoming videos. Don't forget to go check out my playlist. If you like gel printing videos, I've got a lot of them. Today's the day I am doing a gel printing stash building session, but I am not going to use one 8x10 gel plate. I am going to use two, and I'm going to show you that two is better than one. Using two plates at once saves gel printing time, saves paint because very little goes to waste, allows you to pull multiple prints, and you're going to get a wide variation of prints. Please keep in mind that videoing a gel printing session is really difficult. There tends to be a lot of footage, and I tend to get sidetracked, so there's a lot of editing. But because I've sped up the video in parts, I have included a flip through of the final prints at the end of the video, so you'll get your close-ups. So along with my two 8x10 gel plates, I have two brayers. One I use for braying on paint and one I use for another purpose. You'll see. I have a book to brayer off the excess paint. You could use scrap papers or whatever you have. And I am going to use stencils. I am going to explore 5 TCW stencils. This one is called Budding Vines. This one, Abstract Leaves. And these are from the 2024 new releases. This one's Banana Leaves. And I will be playing and seeing what I can get these stencils to do. Grid of rings and hanging circles. I've limited to 5 because that's enough I don't want to overwhelm myself. So every session, I start with a warm up, simply putting different color paints on the plates and create some base coat papers that I will be pulling and putting other prints on. Now, I'm not showing all of this, but I'm going to give you an idea of the process. This loosens me up, gets me going, gets me to switch off the thinking side of my brain into the creative side of the brain. And when I'm putting down color, I try to mix colors as I go. And so you don't end up with one tone. And some of the times here, when I'm creating these base coats, I'm using some of my mark makers. This is an embroidery mesh, and it gives a fine print. So here I've placed it on where the wet paint is. Some of that paint is on it, and I've just brayered it onto the other gel plate. And that's going to just add some extra interest to that, whatever I pull on that one. I use recycled paper, things that are in the recycle bin, and I'm just pulling, as I said, base coat prints. I want to have a variety of colors, so I'm grabbing, green and I'm mixing that with blue. I mixed orange with magenta. Pretty much anything goes. And if you can think it, try it out. I encourage you to experiment. Here I'm using some cardboard and I'm making some fine marks. Basically, it's one color or a mixture of colors with a little bit of extra detail. Remember, mixed media, art journaling, gel print is all about those interesting layers. So there's grunge on the gel plate, and that's what you want. And that's why you can't duplicate a gel print. When you have a lot of stuff on there, you can put a coat, as I am here, of a solid color. I went with titanium, unbleached titanium, and then I'm pulling it. And I'm just going to do this. Did this for a good half an hour, just pulling base coat, playing with it, warming myself up, and hoping that thinking, logical part of my brain turns off and the creative side comes up. And whenever I do a stash builder, I start off and I'm really rigid and I'm overthinking it. And then that switch turns. There you see me brayering off into that old phone book. I love that. Those will turn into collage papers. And I'm using the brayer to brayer on there. Oh, look at all that grunge. Remember, you want your gel prints to have a lot of interest. I use my gel prints as Insta backgrounds. I use them to collage, like paper piecing. The focal image, I use them in Rip a Strip to break a page. And different ones will find different uses in my process. Ooh, I love the ombre of that. And there's a sheet. I'm going to just set that to the side. And I'm just going to use that. That becomes a collage sheet too. Like I said, nothing goes to waste. Now, I'm not really maximizing the double plate, but you'll see what I mean and how to use it. And that's what I want you to get out of this video. I don't want you to recreate the strips that I have or the pages that I have. I can't even do that. But the process, the steps, how I'm using the plates, that's what I want you to pay attention to. Here I'm trying to use up some paints that have been sitting around that I don't really like, but I'm finding out that I don't really like them on the gel plate either. There's a fly swatter, and I'm just using that to transfer, using it kind of as a stamp, putting on one plate. Then I typically, once I've put something on the other plate, you let it dry. Love blue and green together. Try different colors. If it doesn't work, just put another print plate on it. Nothing is lost. Yeah, I think you'll see that later in the video as well. So I'm almost done showcasing how I've just built up base colors. I'm just different colors through the rainbow, different combinations, adding some tiny mark making, just add a little bit of interest so I can look through these later and use them if I need to. So first we're going to use this abstract stencil. Now I put blue on there and I'm just going to pull that blue right off through the stencil onto there. Now you can do that with a stencil. Some stencils are going to give a really nice effect and you're going to like it. This one I'm not really fond of at this point in time. But basically I was removing the paint, and here what I'm doing is just removing that paint on those open parts. Then I'm taking that stencil, it's got paint on it, and pressing it onto the second plate. Once that dries, I'm going to put some color on there. So now I'm going to get 2 prints from that one pull, or 3 if you want to count the first one, which I really didn't like, but I'm going to use it for something. Then I brayer it on and I pull it. Now, there wasn't much on the back of the stencil here, and the colors are really close, but it's very faint. You'll see at the end. I do come back and use this stencil again. I think about it and add more. Here I'm adding the blue or purple in there, and then putting it on, and you want to give it enough time to let it lift. Now again, probably because of the colors I used, maybe I didn't have enough paint. The imprint of that abstract leaf stencil is very, very faint. But this is all about exploring and figuring out how to use the different stencils to get prints that I like. So here I kind of switch it up and I grab this hanging circles stencil. I put some blue on it. And here I'm again pulling the paint through the stencil. And I put that other one that I didn't like. Still not a big fan of that one. I'm grabbing some of that newsprint and pulling the paint through, placing it back on the second plate, brayer it on to get that transfer of the paint onto that second plate. So you're getting a positive negative of that stencil in doing that. Once it's dry, and it has to dry, I'm adding colors. And I want to be able to So my circles are dark, so I want something that's lighter so the circles show up. If the circles were light, I might put a darker background on. And there I grabbed one of my base coats that had yellow and orange on it, and that blue that was on there. Now, the print is not a perfect copy of the stencil. My favorite prints are. And here there was still lots left on the plate, so I'm going to pull even another one. And I put unbleached titanium on there. It takes a little time. I'm not the most patient person. Having two plates kind of keeps me busy and maximizes your time while you're gel printing. You're not standing there waiting for the paint to dry. And here I'm putting, I think, red oxide on top of that blue. And then putting, this is just plain copy paper, but you could be using tissue paper, deli paper, any kind of paper you want. I like thinner stuff. Now there's another piece. Look at all that grunge. You can't really tell, oh, I used this stencil on that, but it added an interesting layer. And here's the third one. So I have three very different prints using that one stencil. And this is why using two plates works, because it allows you to do this. And I've got so much more to share with you. You might want to pause, grab a cup of coffee. Here I'm just pulling off some of the grunge onto that gel print. Nothing needs to be wasted. And the grungier it is, the little bits that get left there, that's what makes gel prints so amazing as collage papers. So here I'm putting some, I believe, Prussian blue on there, and I'm putting a lot of paint, and that's also allows me to get multiple prints. There goes the embroidery mesh. I put it on, get a lot of paint on it. I'm putting it on that second plate. I want even more, so I'm kind of using it almost like a stamp pad. And I just brayer it on. I didn't even put another coat. I wanted a lot of that white to show. I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that. That kind of factors into my plan. Transfer it over and print again. Lots of detail on there. So back to this abstract leaf stencil. And I'm pulling the paint through that stencil. There I have all the white space. And I love it. I don't leave it. I actually end up doing something on it that I wish I hadn't, but I'll go back and do that again. I'm mixing blue and green on this one while the other one's drying. So I'm keeping in motion. Putting the hanging circles and that print with that grid mark. Now I'm pulling the paint through the stencil. So that's going to be the dark blue. But where it was white, now I'm going to have those grid marks. Can you see what I mean? Just added a detail. If my base paint was yellow, then the yellow would show where that white and the grid marks are. Ooh, look at that loveliness on here. Now I'm waiting for that to dry, but I'm thinking I got some paint on here maybe. So I put down my print on the table and brayer it on and I transfer some. So you can use the paint that's on the stencil. Now, if I had a third gel plate, I would have put it on top of that because the squishiness helps make a better transfer of the paint when you're using the stencil as a kind of stamp. And there we have it. I love the grunge and the imperfections of it. Now there's lots of grunge on the table, so I'm putting some Naples yellow on there. I think the Naples yellow will look good with the blue, get a good contrast, and I'm pressing. Now, that doesn't even resemble the stencil at all, but I love it as a print, and it's going to work really well in my stash. In my collage paper page stash, gel print stash, I want a variety of pattern and textures and colors so that when I am looking for something, I have that available. So abstract leaves, I'm back to this stencil. I kind of gave it a break and came back to it. This one, there was a base coat there, got the blue on it. Oh, I love this. But unless you're willing to play, unless you're willing to keep going back, try different colors, try different combinations, you'll never know. Forget about the rules, create. And here I took that blue one that I liked with the white space, and I thought I didn't like it and put another stencil on it. I'm not really fond of that, but I will use it. It might be a rip-a-strip. I might add paint. I might do some stamping on it. There I transferred a little bit. There wasn't much. Grabbed a base coat here. If it doesn't work, it's only paper. And if you have copy paper that is out of the recycle bin, one side's used, that works. Love it. Again, we're getting different prints that look very different. Some just have a hint of that stencil. Some you will know that which stencil I used. I'm mixing bright aqua with purple here. That's a good color combination. And I'm putting the grid of circles one on here. But I think there's wide open spaces here. So I look at my mark makers. I grab some small bubble wrap, lift it up. So I've made that it, lift up the stencil and pull that print. Liking the look of it. Now, if you like the look of that and then think, okay, I like the aqua and the purple. Maybe I could use yellow and red. Maybe I could use something else. So I'm doing that again. And this time, instead of just, I'm going to make use of that, I'm just moving that and using it as a stamp. Oh, look at that transfer on that base coat. Lift that up, take this, transfer it to that print. There's the circles, and there, I'm going to get another pool. This is very faint, those circles, but I love it. I love that grunge at the top there. Oh, and look at what's on the gel plate. That's not going to waste. So I kind of revamped. I got a little bit sidetracked. So the next day I said, okay, I want to showcase using stencils. Can I do something else? Some of this I wasn't particularly happy with. So there I put the base coat of green on the gel plate, taking one of these base coat prints, and I'm pulling the paint through the stencil. I want to remove it, so I'm thinking, oh, I'll put it on there. And it's okay. At the end, when I showcase these, I'm going to talk about ways of using these. I want to get rid of more of that paint. This one's called the Stencils Banana Leaves. And here I've mixed red with purple, which again, beautiful color combo. Give it a try. Put the banana leaf stencil. Oh, decide, nope, I'm going back to the grid of circles. The creator has the power to change her mind. Put the mesh on to get that mark through those big opened areas. I'm going to put the mesh here, add a little detail onto that. And again, if you've got the two plates, you can jump back and forth and add more layers and interest to your pull. There, I pulled it. That looks just like the stencil, but I'm going to show away later on. And then I think, oh, I'm going to brayer that onto this yellow one. Ooh, I love that. I'm using it kind of like a stamp pad. And then I think, oh, what if I offset it? Now, there was no more paint left on it, but the idea was there, and I'm going to come back to that and do that deliberately with that grid of circles stencil. Like I said, I'm playing with these stencils. I want to figure out how I can best use those stencils to get some interesting patterns. Look at the grunge there. We've got the circles, we've got the banana leaves one. That's going to make an interesting Insta background. So here I'm putting that back on. I want to get it, I want it offset it this time. Just want to get paint on it. But I think, okay, I'm just going to add some detail to that, what's on that plate. And then I'm just adding it to the print. Just one more layer. Look at those little pock marks on there. Like I said, nothing goes to waste. Now I want to pull some of that paint off through there. So I just grabbed one of the brayered off sheets and I'm just adding another detail to it. Now there's hopefully wet paint on that stencil. I'm offsetting it to get that kind of thing. Oh, there was paint on my brayer. That wasn't the plan, but I like it. And a happy accident. Look at the pattern. So even though it's the grid of circles stencil, now it's a totally different pattern that I have. This I'm going to duplicate. I love that. So I'm going to duplicate it with other colors. But I'm restraining myself from doing that because I want to showcase using the stencils. So here I've got the red. I'm adding some blue, thinking this is light enough. It's going to be interesting. And I'm going to pull that one. Now, my gel prints, I could add things to it at any time. They don't have to be finalized. So here I've got that yellow-orange print, and I'm thinking, okay, what can I do with this grid of circles? So I put the bright aqua. Bright aqua goes good on the orange, and then I'm using it kind of as a stamp, pressing it so I get good contact. Oh, look at that. So I'm using the gel plate on the right, almost like a stamp pad, and then stamping
I like that
on
so
an
much that I
existing
grabbed
gel
the
print
6-inch
base coat
stencil
print
grid of circles
to
and
add
I'm
another
using
layer of
it
interest. And I love
basically as a
this. So I will
stamp using
totally be
that two
using this grid
system.
of circles stencil
Now it would work
like this.
better if I put the other plate, the other gel plate, underneath the print that I am pressing this onto. That just, because it's squishy, it'll help transfer the paint a lot easier than the hard tabletop surface. But mine already has paint on it, so I almost need 3. No, that's too much, right? So I'm just putting lots of paint on that, getting lots of paint on there, and then using it as a stamp. And here I have this really, really grungy print. And, teal, that bright aqua teal color looks so good on anything with orange and red. It just adds so much. So when you're adding or wanting to add to your prints, think about aqua or teal. You'd be surprised at how many prints can just be elevated by adding that color. And again, the close-ups of these will be at the end. I'm going to show all these prints and you'll be able to see them in more detail. And I can't reiterate enough how much you just need to play and be relaxed as you do this. So we have the grid of circles and I have some of these prints and I'm not exactly thrilled with them. I'm thinking, okay, what can I do to bump them up? And so I grabbed my DIY foam stamps, and I'll link that video. And here I'm using the gel plate, the other gel plate, as a stamp pad, basically putting white paint, or I think that's just white gesso. And then I'm stamping on that, adding an embellishment. And this is pushing back that circle and making the print a whole lot more interesting. So once you have the core of the print, you can always embellish it with stamps, with more stenciling, what have you, other mark making tools. And you can do that as part of the gel printing, stash building process, or in a separate time. Here, I just kind of tried to remove some of that, and I'm putting some black on there because I'm thinking I want contrast, adding white or black. Here, I've used 2 different stamps. And you can see the circles are still there, but they're not so predominant. And I'm liking these prints a whole lot more. And here you see me using that second plate. One I'm using as basically a stamp pad, and the other one I'm using as a platform to get that squishy and get better contact. Here I'm just adding some mark making with I believe that's a shelf liner. I'm adding some green and blue here. And I'm back to this stencil, Abstract Leaves. There's so much motion. Putting the embroidery mesh on it to add a layer, and then transferring that onto the third plate. And then I have my base coat on there and pulling it through the stencil. Ooh, I like that. That's a good combination. But if I had given up, now I'm using greens and, very botanical colors, but there's nothing saying you have to. So there I've transferred it on to the other plate. And then once it's dry, that's an important part. Don't forget to let it dry. You can put the color, kind of the background color. Rubbing it, letting it soak a little bit. Deciding what colors I want. So like I said, I could be using, I'm using a lot of orange and greens and yellows, but I could totally be using purples and pinks and blues. So if you're not fond of the colors I'm using, mix it up. Try different colors. And I recommend, have one stencil, put it through its paces, and then just do different color combinations. Limit your choices, but then expand some of those. Oh, I'm loving that. That is gorgeous. I like the dark green with that lighter background. When you find something you like, then you try to do it again. So here I've put that on the background. And then as soon as I pulled this one, I remembered my stained glass grungy technique. And I'm going to link that video because that gives a step-by-step tutorial. But I'm going to give you the sneak peek of that one here. So here's how you do that. You put a generous coat of black paint on gel plate 1. Drop the stencil on top. And these are all 12 by 12 stencils. I'm making sure there's good contact. And then what you want to do is pull the black paint out. Now I'm grabbing some of these brayered off sheets, and I'm really liking how that looks with the bright color underneath. I think that's going to make some interesting collage paper. So again, nothing's wasted, but you want to pull off a fair amount of the black paint through the openings of the stencil. If you leave more paint, you're going to get a grungier effect. So if that's what you're going for, leave more of the black. If you want more of a stained glass effect, you want to pull off a lot. Look at how nice that is with those bright colors on that pull off sheet. Rip that up and you've got some wonderful collage papers. All of this is going into my filing system to be used. This needs to dry. Both the one that I put on that second plate, basically stamped it on, and the one where I pulled the black through the stencil, the one on the right. So once these are completely dry, you want to put some colors on this. And again, any color goes, any combination of colors. Pull out your color wheel. If the colors are next to each other, they're not going to make mud. If they're across the wheel from each other, you want to be careful that you're not going to end up with a color that you're not going to be too fond of. So here I'm going again, blue and green. I wanted a lot of greens to add to my stash. My stash was low on that, so that was kind of in the back of my mind. And again, here, because I was doing 5 stencils, I was limiting somewhat the colors because I find otherwise it's just too overwhelming. So here I had way too much paint. So what you're seeing me doing here is I'm taking some of that paint and braiding it off and just putting it onto another piece of paper. I'll use it as a collage sheet or in that Yellow Pages book. If you put too much paint on, it's going to be hard for you to pull out all these layers, or it's going to take a long time to dry. When you're braying on the paint, what you want to see is that hint of the initial stenciled part coming through. If you can't see it, you might want to remove paint. But like I said, the stained glass grungy technique that I'm showing on here at the end, I will link that video. I will link other videos, gel printing videos that I think will be beneficial. I did another one a while back about the 2-plate, how to use the 2-plate, really step by step. So here I'm doing yellow, orange with a little bit of purple in there, kind of getting an ombre kind of look. And again, you can see right there, you can see the pattern of the stencil coming through. So that's what you want to make sure you don't put too much paint. You want to be able to see that. And sneak a peek, pull it. Love, because it's black and it's showcasing. You get more contrast. So I'm quite a happy camper there. So that's basically the second print by using the stencil as a stamp with the wet paint, transferring it onto plate 2. And then this one, which is the grungier one. Love, love, love. So much interest, grunge, everything. So there we have, like, compare the other way and then the stained glass way with the black paint. But the point is, one stencil, lots of different options. You can get different effects and they all have a purpose. So I wanted to continue with the stained glass grungy effect. So I'm looking for a stencil, and this is where the hanging vines or budding vines, this one. When I first got this one from TCW, I thought, oh, I bet this would be interesting. And then I didn't know what or how to use it, but this totally works. So here I put the black paint on, a generous amount, because I want the black paint on the underside because I want to use it as a stamp. Now I need to remove the black paint through the stencil. And this can go, it doesn't have to be wasted. It can go on gel prints already. It can, just as an interesting pattern. So here I'm just brayering. This was a runoff sheet. I like the black with the contrast. I don't mind that. rip that up and would make an interesting collage sheet. So I'm just pulling off a lot of that black. And again, the more that you get rid of the black, the less grungy, more stained glass effect. The more black you leave, the grungier it is. No right or wrong, just what you prefer. Transfer that over. I'm using my clean brayer to make sure I get good transfer. And there we have it. And that's why you need two plates. Again, it takes time to dry, and the one on the right takes a little bit longer. And then choose your colors. So here I'm going orange and magenta, and I think I put yellow in there. But I could have gone blue, teal, navy. I could have gone. But you're mindful of, you want that black, that stained glass part to come through. So you want the colors to be light enough so you get that contrast. And they don't have, like, I could put different colors in different areas. And this would be something I would just do this technique and do it and do it. And when you find you like something, do it again. I think the stained glass one works really well with stencils that have nice openings. But that being said, try any stencil and see, does it work? Does it work with the stained glass one? Does it work with the pull through? Does it work as a stamp? How does each stencil work best or give me a print that I want? And different stencils will be showcased in different ways. So there I'm removing the paint so you can see the stencil pattern come through. And if you look close, you can see that. Then I'm going to put on the copy paper. Now I could pull this with tissue paper or deli paper or any kind of paper you want. I just prefer copy paper. I don't like too thick because I tend to layer it up and I don't want it thicker down the road. But it depends on how you plan on using them. I will be doing a video on how to use your gel prints. Here I'm adding magenta, orange, again, getting kind of an ombre kind of look. I had so much paint on there. I just grabbed a copy paper and I'm just brayering off. And that's not going in the garbage. I'm just going to use it. I might stencil on it. I might use it as a base sheet for another gel print. I love brayer backgrounds, so it might just be the beginning of an art journal page. So even when you make a mistake, you don't need to waste the paint. Giving it a little time, and you just trial and error to see, and then pull the print. Love, 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 loving this one. The bright colors with the contrast of the stamped image on that plate. And let's look at this one. Interesting. Got a lot of grunge on that one. I didn't take out too much from that one side. So we've got delicious grunge. Now I'm just showcasing here if you pull off more. So that one I just had a print and I pulled off all the black paint onto a base print. Instead of putting it onto my scrap pieces of paper, I used it. So I got that one print on a base coat. Now I'm just removing as much of that as I want. I don't want it as grungy. I want it more stained glass-ish. And I'm figuring this out or remembering as I go. Transfer, use my second clean brayer to make sure I get good contact. Lift, so there we have the transfer. And here you're going to get that positive and negative of the stencil. Gives it time to dry. And now I decide I'm going to use some teal, some aqua, some Naples yellow. And I use some red in there. Cadmium red, I believe. And then I'm brayering it on. And it kind of got a little bit, you'll see with the pull, it didn't blend as much as I would have liked. So we kind of got some blotchy areas. That being said, there is no bad print. I like the color combination, the Naples yellow with the red and the aqua. I just would have probably blended it a little bit differently, spread out the paint. But you get what you get and you don't get upset. And then you make it work, right? It may not be the Insta background that's just ready to go, focal point and sentiment. You might have to add to it, tweak it, use it in different ways. And that's what the video that is going to come shortly is going to focus on. How to use different gel prints for different effects. Put that one on. Now that's going to sit for a while. And here I'm going, I think I go green, bright green, hooker's green. Now, some of this is the medium body paint, the Liquitex, and the other is Liquitex Basics, but it's fluid acrylics. Now, I got these at Michael's, and I like the containers they were in and the lids. I still prefer my medium body, but these do work rather well on the gel plate. So I think I'm going to, the ones that I bought here, my assortment, I think I'll definitely use them on the gel plate. They're a little bit thinner, easy to blend. Again, I had too much paint. It's the end of my gel printing session and I'm tired. So I'm just brayering it off. I can add some mark making on top of that. And let's pull this print. So you can see how these colors work together, but my Naples yellows really didn't blend too well in there. So yeah, live and learn. And you can target certain areas. You may not use it in its entirety. You might just find a certain area that you're going to use. And there's the green one with the vines, the contrast. And I love that. I think I might even paint out like where the flowers are. Use this as an Insta background and paint out those parts. So let's review. This is the banana leaf stencil. That's just pulled through the stencil. This one is pulled. We've got a lot of grunge here, but again, you can use parts of it. Light background. I would add some red to that. This one had the grid of circles as well as the banana leaves one. Here I added some embellishments and you got little hints of it. And I love, this is my favorite of this group. Oh, maybe this one. This one just has a very bit of slight connection to it. And there's all of them. Look at the variety that you can get using one stencil. So this is the grid of circles. And I've put, some of my mark making tools, the bubble wrap, the shelf liner through there. This one was more of a pull-off print, but you can still see the circles, right? So depending on whatever you look. Here I kind of bumped the stencil to get a whole different pattern. This one I'm going to totally do again and again with different colors because I love that effect. Here's where I used these two. I used the stencil and put paint on it and use it more like a stamp. Love that with the circles. Those really are my favorites. There's another one with the bubble wrap through it. And these ones, when you don't like something, that just means you're going to need to add more layers. And here I use my DIY foam stamps to adding to it. This one has banana leaves and circles. It's interesting. I think something's missing here. I'm thinking I need to add some contrast. There's a little bit of blue peeking through. Maybe I'll add blue or navy. Here we've again we've embellished it with some DIY stamps. And this had some mark makers, but you still see some of those circles. So depending on the effect you want, again, the variety. All from one stencil. So get out your stencils and put them through the pace. See what they can do for you. This is the Budding Vines one. Here, this is just pulling the black paint through the stencil. The stained glass effect. This was pulling the black paint through a stencil on a colored background. Really love that. Stained glass, grunge effect. Love all that grunge. This one, while the blending of paints didn't work, love the color combo. I'll be able to use it. So this is Abstract Leaves. Love this. This was with the mesh through the stencil. Now here we've got a very, very faint amount. It's the color combination I had, but it's just an interesting layer. Sometimes you just want the marks. You don't want the actual stencil. Love this one with the color combo. I'm looking for a place for my sloth to hang. That might be... This one gave me the inspiration for going back and revisiting the stained glass grungy effect. Love the colors here. Love the orange on there with the green. This one with the black on it. The stained glass, grungy effect. I could see a Julie Nutting doll on that one. Kind of peeking out from under the leaves. This one, I think it's a work in progress. It's not quite done. And here, just pulling the black paint through onto a base color. I could get lots of use out of that. Once again, look at the variations. One stencil, lots of different looks, some with more. Now this is the Hanging Circles stencil, and I cannot tell a lie. I think this is my favorite. The variations that we got with this, it's very organic looking. There isn't a print here. Some you see the stencil, some you just have hints of it, little bits here, depending on which pull it was. So using lots of paints, using the two plates allows you to get this variety. Using it as a stamp, different color combos. I might add a little more orange to this. Use this as an Insta background, add more orange, add more solid blue. This one, I think a Rip-a-Strip. Here I had grabbed another stencil and there's some letters or words. Love this one, where the base coat had that embroidery mesh. Oh, who doesn't love this one? Another one with the embroidery mesh. Lots of positive and negative. And look at them. Yum. So thank you so much for joining me on my gel print experiment. I hope you got some tips. I hope you're going to give this a try and maybe start thinking about buying another gel plate. You won't be sorry.